Hello and welcome to this webinar for eSeller, where we're joined by Donna Dobson, Senior Manager from SagePay, and we're going to be talking about, are you ready for Christmas 2014? Christmas may seem a long way away, but in retail terms it's not, it's just around the corner. So Donna, I shall hand it over to you.
Excellent. So thank you, Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. And as Paul stated, I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes just highlighting some of the tips that we at SagePay believe businesses should be considering in the run-up to Christmas. So as Paul said, my name is Donna Dobson, and I'm I am the Senior UK Marketing Manager here at SagePay. So just a little bit of background about me. I've worked in the technology industry for 15 years now, and I've seen a huge amount of change in that time. Just looking at the payments industry, which I've joined recently, I can see change occurring at great speed. The way in which we shop and pay is moving dramatically. And it's moving from being traditionally a one-option method to multiple options that encompass both online and offline stages. So a very quick piece about SagePay. We're part of the Sage Group, a FTSE 100 company. We're Europe's leading independent payment service provider, and we process millions of secure payments for thousands of customers every year. We offer a full range of payment solutions, from online payments, face-to-face payments, mail order, telephone order, and e-invoicing solutions. And our vision is to make the process of accepting payments simpler, faster, safer, and more profitable as well for businesses of all sizes. And because we're part of Sage, our products also integrate seamlessly with Sage accounting software. So, on to our tips. Christmas isn't just coming, it's almost here, and most businesses will now have their Christmas in-store and online strategies in place. But don't worry if you're not there yet, because we've still got a few weeks before the big shopping period starts. But before I go into our tips for Christmas 2014, I thought it'd be interesting to highlight a few stats from 2013, with particular focus on online spending. Now, the data I'm showing on this slide reflects the results for Cyber Monday 2013, when 113 million visits were made to online stores. Amazon hired 15,000 temporary staff to cope with the extra demand, and shoppers spent 400 million hours online just purchasing Christmas gifts. And just to clarify, UK Cyber Monday is the first Monday in December. So just some other facts about last year as well. Online spending in 2013 was predicted to be £10 billion, but in fact it was 11 billion, and there's every indication that 2014 is going to be another bumpy year. Just looking at gross domestic product figures as well as a bit of a rough guide, we're seeing a general improvement in GDP year on year, according to the Office for National Statistics. So to illustrate my point, in Q2 2014, which is April, May, June, GDP was 3.2% higher in terms of volume compared to Q2 in 2013. And perhaps a stat that's more important to us on this webinar, the ONS also saw a 2.2% increase in real terms for household disposable income between Q1 in 2014 versus Q1 in 2013. Now, those were the latest figures that I could retrieve, and I've not really seen any headline figures to suggest that we're heading towards another recession or things are getting worse. So I think we can expect a good Christmas and good Christmas online spending. And so in light of that, we've predicted a spend of 13 billion for 2014. So, as I said, Cyber Monday falls on the first Monday in December. And so this year it will fall on the 1st. And we predict that peak purchasing times will be between 12 and 2 p.m, so lunchtime, and then again later in the evening when folks are going to be at home making or visiting sites and making purchases via laptops, PCs and tablets. Now, typically, Mondays have always been the strongest online shopping days. However, last year, a number of e-tailers offered special online discounts on Monday, the 2nd of December to help boost sales, and it actually proved to be a really successful strategy, with online sales recorded as 23.3% higher than the previous Monday. That Monday was the 25th of November, and on that Monday, sales were 33% higher compared to the same time in 2013. So I'm just going to pause for a second and put that into perspective. What we're saying here is that 2013 online sales were greater than 2012, and that online shopping started in November and built up to a crescendo that peaked on the first Monday in December. So my first tip to you is to gear yourself up for Cyber Monday. Consider what online discounts and bundles you can put up for offer, and stock up for all those extra orders. And remember, people will start purchasing in late October, so building up in November and reaching that peak around about the Cyber Monday. And Mondays are going to be the most popular day of the week for online shopping. So on to my second tip. I'm going to refer to a survey we conducted earlier this year with 1,000 businesses and 1,000 consumers, which showed that successful businesses measure, and measure again what is happening on their websites. So just for clarification, for the purposes of our survey, we identified a successful business as one that had seen a 21% or a 21% growth or more growth in their revenue in the previous year. And I'm going to go into this measurement piece in a bit more detail, as understanding what's happening on your online store is really crucial to your success. So as part of the measurement, consider this, that every 1% increase in conversion rates on your website can equate to an average of a 16.66% increase in revenue. This figure is based on small businesses' conversions, but actually just think, regardless of size, how much time, effort and money would you need to spend to generate a 16% plus increase, or even a 10 or 5% increase in revenue by driving more traffic to your site? So in essence, if you're looking to increase the revenue you generate from your site, then it's cheaper, quicker and easier for you to convert more of those who are visiting your site, rather than having to look at ways of attracting more people to your site. And just small conversion improvements could mean the difference between a good Christmas and a stellar Christmas. So this is why measurement is really important, because if you can understand where your visitors are dropping out of your store, then you can make improvements to keep them moving through your buying process. That's why knowing what's happening across your site is vital to your future success. And if you're still not quite convinced, then one other stat that I can share with you is, again, this is from our 2013 survey, in which we found that small businesses were only converting 6% of their visitors into customers, and even large businesses were only converting 35% of their visitors. So there's lots of room for improvement for both small and medium-sized businesses. So I've now got a quick poll question for you, which is, do you know where your dropouts are occurring on your site? And this should be appearing on your screens any minute now. Excellent. So I'll give you a few seconds to fill that in. Okay, so we should be receiving the results from that. And yep, it looks like most of you don't, which is interesting. So it may well be worth investing in some measurement tools to understand where people may well be dropping out of your site. Here's the results from our survey, and we found that the payment pages was the biggest offender, closely followed by delivery costs. And I guess the point of this is that most of us will spend time thinking about the products and services that we're selling, how we can optimize content, get ourselves to the top of the search rankings, make our sites look really compelling and exciting. And we can often forget that the most tenuous part of the process is paying. So it is worth looking at. So not only is my next tip, to know where your dropouts are occurring, but also look at ways in which you can rectify the problems. So I've got a couple of ideas here, certainly with the payment pages and with delivery costs. So on the payment pages, consider how many steps you've put in place asking customers for information before they can make a purchase. And where possible, strip out as much of that as you possibly can. You want to make that buying process as easy and what we call as frictionless as possible. So ask yourself this question: do you really need all the information that you're asking your customers or your potential customers to give you? If people make a mistake on the form, make it easy for them to go back and edit it. Best thing is to not ask them to fill it in again, because that can just put people off. And if possible, I try and avoid those great big crosses, just perhaps a little message that says, oops, something's been missed, perhaps you want to go back and fill this in. Those big error messages don't always go down well with shoppers. Another thing that does put people off is if they're forced to register and hand over details like email addresses before they've actually made a purchase. It can erode trust as people feel like you're just trying to get their emails to then spam them with all those great marketing messages. Another option perhaps is get the information that you need and ask them if they're willing to give you their email address to receive further details in the future, any offers that you may be giving out, and perhaps even if they'd like to be emailed the receipt for their purchases. Some people like to receive confirmation via email. Again, to try and make the process really quite quick and easy, offering things like postcode lookup can help speed up the form filling process. And so those are good things for the payment pages, and there's a couple of other areas as well that I'll go into in a minute. But the other big offender that we have here is delivery costs. And again, one big thing with the delivery cost is to be honest about it up front. The worst thing is having filled in your payment pages, got to the end, hit the submit form, and then discover that you've got a £10 added because you're getting your products delivered to you. That's really frustrating. So just be honest. If people know they're going to be charged for delivery, that's fine. And in terms of the delivery options, you don't have to go too mad here. Mostly people either want it really fast or really cheap. So offering a couple of alternatives is a great idea. There's no need to overcomplicate things. And don't forget, with delivery around the Christmas time, it does become especially important. So you want to make sure you reassure customers that your delivery options will get their gifts to them on time before the big day. So do try and be clear on last order and posting dates. So my next tip is around variety of payments, partly part of the payment pages, but it's worth pulling this out on its own. I want to illustrate this point with data that we found from interviewing 1,000 consumers about their in-store buying methods. 17% of them stated that they would put items back on a shelf if the store only accepted cash and they didn't have enough cash on them at the time. And in addition to that, 36% said that they would shop elsewhere if their preferred payment method wasn't available. Now, I know that's an example for in-store purchases, but I think the point here is that we can assume if this behaviour is happening within a store environment, then it's also happening in the online world as well. Now, for a number of online stores, I know that some payment options can seem expensive, but if you're selling high-value items or you're encouraging customers to add to their baskets or upgrade their items, then offering alternative payment methods can encourage higher purchase values. And again, interestingly, 80% of businesses that we interviewed said that they would adopt new payment methods if their customers requested them. But I'm not sure how customers are supposed to do this. Today customers expect things to be available to them rather than asking for them or even demanding them. So I think the reality is most shoppers will simply discard their baskets and leave without telling you why. So maybe with an online store, there's an opportunity to ask your shoppers to give you feedback, or even test different payment options, and again, measure that impact, which is why, again, the measurement piece is so important. I think I said this before, but consumers are really expecting a lot of choice. They're not even just demanding it anymore. So be aware that effectively consumers are using a multitude of channels in which to both browse and purchase. And therefore and I will come on to this in a bit more detail later on, but it is worthwhile perhaps trying to understand, how your consumers are getting to your site. And that is possible. There are tools out there that enable you to see where your consumers have come from to get to your site, and just making sure that you are making the most of all the consumers. And in fact, that does bring me on to mobile optimization as part of that earlier consumer choice piece. A recent IBM report, actually on Christmas 2013, found that online sales from mobiles, which covers both smartphones and tablets, is very much on the increase. So for Cyber Monday 2013, over a third of all online sales came from mobile devices, which was a growth of 94% compared to mobile purchases in 2012. And as I'm showing here on this slide, we're actually only seeing 40% of businesses with an optimized mobile website. So this is where I have another poll question for you. Are your websites mobile optimized? I'm just waiting for everyone to finish answering, and then we will share these results. Well, that is looking good. So almost half are saying that yes, their site is mobile optimized, which is great. However, it says that half aren't quite there yet, although 25% of you are planning to, which is great. Just referring back to those stats from IBM, we are expecting to see a lot more people browsing using their mobile devices, whether that be smartphones or tablets. So my tip here is, if you haven't optimized your site for mobile, now is definitely the time to do so. We also found that 44% of our successful businesses have a mobile app. Now, remember from our 2014 report, we did identify a successful business as one who had growth of 21% revenue or more during the previous year. And it's possible that a mobile app may not make sense for everyone, but it could well be worth investigating. So if it's something that you haven't considered before, maybe you want to going forward. Then the next area I'm going to talk about is a slick checkout. So this is about offering your customers a frictionless experience. And one way to do this is to offer a single-click checkout experience. It's often referred to as tokenization, and tokenization provides a secure way of collecting, managing, and storing your customers' card details in a safe and secure manner. The card data is encrypted and transmitted as a series of unique random digits known as a token, and those tokens are then stored on a secure server. Now, this is great for the consumer because the details are saved securely and they allow for quicker repeat purchases, as the customer only has to identify themselves, either with a unique password or a 3-digit identification number. And that 3-digit number is the one that's found on the back of most cards. I use this myself to pay off my credit card, and I think most of us are aware or familiar with this system through Amazon. So then for future payments, the token is sent to the merchant's payment processor, and it's matched to the original card number, and that's when the transaction is authorized. Now, another incentive for considering token or tokenization is that as a retailer or an e-tailer, it can also save you money off your PCI regulation costs. And PCI stands for the payment card industry. So with tokenization, most companies found that they can be PCI compliant at a lower level. And as there are costs associated with the 4 different levels of compliance, and from our survey, we found that small and medium businesses had saved around an average of £6,000 off those costs. So my tip here is, if you don't already offer tokenization, then it's well worth looking into, just to create both that frictionless experience for your customers, but also it could potentially help save you some money too. So my final tip for today is around fraud versus usability. Last year, we saw 40% of businesses lose money as a result of fraud, and fraudsters will operate all year round, we know that, but Christmas can be particularly busy for fraudulent transactions, as most fraudsters will try to hide in the data during peak time. We also found, and this was from our report that we did earlier this year, that the average business lost £4,500 to fraud in that year, in the last 12 months. But 39% of businesses don't spend anything on fraud tools. They only use the free tools that are provided by most payment service providers. So my first tip here would be, it could well worth be looking at and investigating and investing in some additional fraud tools if you are experiencing a high level of fraud. But here's the conundrum. If your fraud rules are too tight, then you could actually be turning away genuine business. Now, if they're too lax, you're possibly losing too much money to fraud. And there's no right or wrong answer here, because the key really is finding the right balance for you as a business. But in the meantime, I am going to share with you a few tips for managing fraud. So the first one is, beware of orders that are placed either late at night or in the wee hours of the morning. Next, always check the validity of your delivery address, because fraudsters often use bogus addresses, and do avoid PO boxes. Investing in geolocation technology to help find the shopper's exact location is very useful, as that can identify if the order is coming from a high-risk country. Cyber criminals are increasingly targeting the cardholder data. So again, tokenization, as I've just mentioned, that helps avoid having to store payment data that can then be compromised, because the data is stored, is encrypted. And then my final quick tip here is, analyze customer information and purchasing behavior to build up a profile of your customer. And this is where your measurement tools can come into play, because that will help you to recognize genuine orders, and it will alert you to fraudulent ones. So the last piece I wanted to share with you, not so much really around the Christmas tips, but I thought this would be quite interesting, is just the future of payments. Again, this was from our survey. And just interestingly, that almost half of consumers that we surveyed, and it was over 1,000 consumers we talked to, thought that fingerprint technology or fingerprint recognition technology would be available by 2025. But the vast majority of us still think that cash will be around. Only 16% thought that banknotes would have died out. Finally then, just to summarise, basically, we're all expecting to see an increase in Christmas spending this year, and we do need to be prepared. So the tips I've covered today included measuring what's happening on your website, identifying where shoppers are dropping out from the buying process, removing friction and making it easy for shoppers to purchase from your online store, looking to optimize your site for mobile if you haven't already done so, and arming yourself against fraud, but taking into account genuine purchases. Now, we do have a lot more tips in our Cyber Monday Survival Guide, and we can send those out to everyone after today's webinar. And in addition, if you do want to talk to one of our payments consultants, then you can contact me directly and I will happily put you in touch with someone.